Word, photo. Description, a picture taken with a camera. It can be a digital image or a print. It's a common word used to describe a visual record of a person, place, or thing. Phrases of example. First, he took a photo of her laughing, a moment captured forever. Second, she held up a photo, a faded image of a long. Third, a single photo could tell 1,000 words, a history untold. Word, colored. Description, describes something that has pigment or color, not gray, white, or black. It's often used to describe objects or surfaces displaying hues. However, be mindful of its historical use and potential for causing offense. Person of color is preferred. Phrases of example. First, the room was colored by the setting sun, a warm embrace. Second, his face was colored with anger, a fiery red hue. Third, the tapestry was colored with stories of old, woven in time. Word, back. Description, indicates movement or position to the opposite direction or place from where something or someone is. It can also mean returning to a previous state or condition. It's often used to describe movement away from a forward position. Phrases of example. First, and so with the sunshine and the great bursts of leaves growing on the trees, just as things grow in fast movies, I had that familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer. Second, he was going back, he thought, to the place where he had come from. Third, the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. Word, turnout. Description, denotes the number of people who attend an event or participate in an activity. It refers to attendance rates, especially in contexts like elections, meetings, or performances. It suggests a measure of engagement or response. Phrases of example. First, the turnout for the rally was surprisingly large, reflecting the public's growing discontent. Second, the turnout of voters in the midterm election showed a significant shift in political sentiment. Third, a dismal turnout greeted the festival's opening night, a sign of fading interest. Word, rest. Description, means a period of time spent relaxing and recovering from activity or sleep. It can refer to pausing from work, taking a break, or a place to recline and relax. It's about pausing and recuperating. Phrases of example. First, he needed a place to rest his weary bones. Second, a good night's rest is a great help. Third, rest is not idleness, and to lie sometimes on the grass on a summer day is as necessary as quartz. Word, substantial. Description, means considerable in size, amount, or importance. It suggests something is significant, not minor or trivial. It's used to describe quantities, changes, or impacts that are noteworthy and have a real effect. Phrases of example. First, the evidence was substantial. It would not be easily dismissed. Second, the change he proposed was substantial and required careful consideration. Third, her contribution to the project was substantial, significantly impacting the final outcome. Word, sweet. Description, describes something pleasing to the taste or pleasant in nature. It can refer to food, but also to a person's personality or a kind action. It suggests something agreeable, delightful, or lovable. Phrases of example. First, life is too important to be sweet. Second, the sweetest things in life are often the simplest. Third, it's a sweet sadness, born of wanting and losing. Word, art. Description, refers to the expression of creativity and imagination, often through visual forms like painting or sculpture. It can also describe music, writing, or other forms of creative work that are appreciated for their beauty or skill. Phrases of example. First, I love the idea of art, but I don't know anything about it. Second, all art is but imitation of nature, and a very poor one at that. Third, the greatest art is that which conceals art, and that is a thing I do not possess. Word, ship. Description, to send or transport goods using a boat or aircraft. It means to convey cargo from one place to another, often commercially. It can also refer to sending something, like a document, electronically. Phrases of example. First, she tried to ship him off to a boarding school. Second, they would ship out with the morning tide. Third, he shipped his wares across the ocean. Word, powder. Description refers to a loose, fine, and dry substance, often made from grinding something solid into a dust-like form. It can describe substances like flour, sugar, or chemicals. It's used when describing texture, ingredients, or materials. Phrases of example. First, the gunpowder was old, but it still packed a punch. Second, he carefully measured the powder for the mixture. Third, the blizzard coated everything in a fine, white powder. Word, well. Description describes a good or satisfactory state of being. It can refer to health, condition, or quality, often used to answer, "How are you?" or to describe something's condition. Phrases of example. First, she was a good woman, and she did well in everything she did. Second, he did well despite the hardships he faced. Third, I feel well enough to go outside today. Word, stranger. Description, a person whom you do not know. It refers to someone unfamiliar, often encountered briefly or unexpectedly. It describes someone outside your circle of friends or acquaintances. Phrases of example. First, he was a stranger in a strange land, alone and adrift. Second, a stranger approaches, his face etched with worry. Third, I am a stranger to myself, lost in the echoes of the past. Word, outrage. Description, a strong feeling of shock and anger caused by something unfair, unjust, or morally wrong. It expresses deep indignation and disapproval of an action or situation. It often implies a sense of moral violation or injustice. Phrases of example. First, the public outrage was a carefully constructed performance. Second, his outrage at the injustice was a shield against despair. Third, the villagers felt a shared outrage against the invaders. Word, institutional. Description relates to organizations like schools, hospitals, or governments. It describes something that is characteristic of or controlled by an institution, often implying formality, rules, or a large-scale system. Phrases of example. First, the institutional memory of the company was fragmented and unreliable. Second, his institutional background gave him an advantage in the debate. Third, the art world is full of institutional politics and power struggles. Word, lend. Description means to give something to someone temporarily with the expectation that it will be returned. It signifies providing assistance or an item for a limited time, not giving it away permanently. It's a common verb for sharing. Phrases of example. First, I will lend you my courage, but you must lend me your strength. Second, I could lend you a hand, but I don't have the time. Third, they would lend him their ears, and he would tell them stories of the old days. Word, coach. Description, a person who trains a person or team in sports, or gives someone advice and instruction in another area. It can also refer to a vehicle for travel. It's used when describing someone who guides or assists. Phrases of example. First, he was an able coach, understanding their hopes and fears. Second, the coach barked instructions, his voice echoing in the gym. Third, I need a coach to help me reach my goals. Word, come. Description, to move or travel toward a place or person. It can also mean to arrive somewhere or to happen or occur. It's a basic verb used to describe movement and occurrence. Phrases of example. First, he will come, and that is all that matters. Second, come, let's go and see. Third, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Word, partner. Description, someone you do something with, like a friend, classmate, or someone you work with. It can also refer to a romantic relationship or a business associate. It signifies a connection or collaboration with another person. Phrases of example. First, a good partner always stands by you. Second, he was her partner in mischief and in dreams. Third, they were business partners, bound by ambition and secrets. Word, popularity. Description refers to the state of being well-liked or having a large following. It describes the degree of acceptance or appeal something or someone holds within a group or society. It's used when discussing trends, fame, or widespread approval. Phrases of example. First, the pursuit of popularity is a fool's errand. Second, popularity is a fickle thing. It comes and goes. Third, she craved popularity, a validation she could never attain. Word, regulator. Description, a person or organization that controls or supervises an activity or industry. It describes someone or something that sets and enforces rules, often to ensure fairness, safety, or quality. It's frequently used in business and government contexts. Phrases of example. First, the regulator of the financial system had to be a force for stability. Second, he acted as a regulator, ensuring the flow of information remained consistent. Third, she served as a regulator, preventing chaos from consuming the city. Word, 40. Description represents the number 40. It's a quantity indicating a count of 4 tens. It's used for counting, ages, measurements, and various numerical contexts. It's a basic, common number. Phrases of example. First, I'm 40, and I haven't done a single thing. Second, the old man had seen 40 summers and winters pass. Third, he was 40 years old and full of hope. Word, during. Description indicates that something happens within a period of time or event. It shows when something occurs, like a meeting, a season, or a journey. It's used to specify the time frame in which an action takes place. Phrases of example. First, during these troubled times, hope is what keeps us going. Second, during his reign, the kingdom flourished with peace and prosperity. Third, during the long winter, she dreamed of spring's return. Word, discourse. Description refers to a formal and structured conversation or discussion about a specific topic. It's more than just talking. It involves reasoned arguments and a clear purpose, often found in academic or professional settings. Phrases of example. First, his discourse, though lengthy, was filled with profound wisdom. Second, the discourse of power shapes our understanding of the world. Third, the discourse on colonialism has shaped many political realities. Word, driving. Description refers to the activity of operating a vehicle. It can also describe the act of propelling something forward. It's a common word used when talking about transportation or movement. Phrases of example. First, the driving rain made the streets glisten. Second, the driving force behind the revolution was hope. Third, he felt a driving need to understand the universe. Word, passport. Description, a document that proves your identity and citizenship. It's required for international travel and allows you to enter or leave a country. It contains your photo, name, and date of birth. Phrases of example. First, she held her passport tightly, a ticket to a new life. Second, he showed his passport to the stern. Third, my passport was stolen, and I was stranded. Word, forum. Description, a place or platform for discussion, either online or in person. It's where people share ideas, opinions, or information on a particular topic. Think of it as a meeting place for exchanging thoughts and perspectives. Phrases of example. First, the internet has become a global forum for discussion and debate. Second, the town hall served as a public forum for local concerns. Third, they established a neutral forum to resolve the dispute. Word, slavery. Description refers to the state of being legally owned by someone else, forced into labor, and deprived of freedom. It involves the exploitation and control of a person as property, often with a history of systemic oppression and human rights violations. Phrases of example. First, the shadow of slavery lies heavy on the land. Second, it is the natural state of man, this slavery to hope. Third, slavery is a cancer, eating at the heart of this nation. Word compute. Description means to calculate or determine something mathematically. It often suggests a complex or precise calculation involving numbers, data, or algorithms. It's used in contexts related to computers, science, or finance. Phrases of example. First, the ability to compute emotions is the essence of empathy. Second, I need to compute the trajectory of the comet. Third, he tried to compute the cost of living in Paris. Word fierce. Description describes someone or something as intense, powerful, and often aggressive or determined. It conveys a sense of strength, passion, and sometimes a potentially threatening quality, going beyond simple strength to suggest a forceful nature. Phrases of example. First, her heart was fierce and unyielding, a storm within her breast. Second, a fierce wind tore at the sails, threatening to capsize the ship. Third, the dragon's gaze was fierce, its eyes burning with ancient fury. Word dry. Description describes something lacking moisture. It can refer to skin, clothes, or even the weather. It suggests a lack of wetness or humidity. It's a common word used to describe a simple state of being. Phrases of example. First, the desert was dry and vast, stretching as far as the eye could see. Second, her skin felt dry and cracked from the sun. Third, the wood was dry and ready for the fire. Word predator. Description denotes an animal or person that habitually preys on others. It signifies someone or something that exploits or harms others for personal gain, often in a ruthless or aggressive way. It carries a connotation of dominance and exploitation. Phrases of example. First, the wolf is a predator, the sheep are its prey. Second, the ultimate predator is the state, which demands and receives endless sacrifices. Third, he was a predator in a city of prey. Word file. Description, a collection of related documents or pieces of information organized together. It can refer to physical folders or digital records. It's used when describing a structured group of things, often for reference or storage purposes. Phrases of example. First, I filed my application and waited for a response. Second, she carefully filed her documents, organized and ready. Third, he tried to file a complaint, but they wouldn't listen. Word accommodation. Description refers to a place to live or stay, like a hotel room or apartment. It can also mean an adjustment or compromise made to help someone or something fit in better. It's often used when discussing travel or making things more suitable. Phrases of example. First, he was grateful for the accommodation he had been given, even though it was a small room. Second, the only real accommodation is a clean conscience. Third, we need a temporary accommodation for our feelings, as we are all just passing through. Word sort. Description means to arrange things based on a particular characteristic, like size, color, or type. It involves separating items into groups that share a common quality. It is used when organizing or categorizing things to make sense of them. Phrases of example. First, I must sort out this mess before it gets worse. Second, let's sort through the evidence and see what we find. Third, she tried to sort out her feelings about him. Word opposed. Description means having or expressing opposition or disagreement to something. It signifies a stance against a particular idea, plan, or person. It implies a resistance or conflict with something else. Phrases of example. First, he was opposed to the idea of marrying her. Second, I am opposed to this war, for it is unjust. Third, they were opposed to any change in the established order. Word cheap. Description means low in price or value. It describes something that costs less than expected or is considered to be of poor quality due to its low price. Often used when discussing cost-effectiveness or affordability. Phrases of example. First, it was a cheap hotel, but it was warm and dry. Second, he bought a cheap suit to impress her. Third, a cheap trinket, a memory of better times. Word, unusual. Description means not common or ordinary, different from what is typical. It describes something that stands out because it's rare, unexpected, or deviates from the usual way things are. Phrases of example. First, it was an unusual sight, a house built of gingerbread. Second, he had an unusual gift for understanding people's true feelings. Third, there was an unusual stillness in the air before the storm. Word, criminal. Description, a person who has committed a crime. It refers to someone who has broken the law and is often associated with illegal activities. It's a common word used to describe someone facing legal consequences. Phrases of example. First, he was a criminal of the worst kind, a man without honor. Second, the criminal's past followed him like a shadow. Third, they accused her of being a criminal, but she was innocent. Word, grade. Description refers to a level of achievement or quality, often assigned in school. It can also describe a category or rank, like in produce quality. It's used to evaluate performance or classify items based on a scale. Phrases of example. First, he got a good grade on the test, and his parents were proud. Second, her grade in English improved with each passing semester. Third, the teachers thought he had the potential to get a higher grade. Word, style. Description refers to a particular manner or way of doing something. It describes how something is done, like clothing, writing, or music. It highlights a distinctive quality or characteristic that makes something recognizable. Phrases of example. First, her style was simple but elegant. Second, he had a certain style, a way of doing things. Third, her writing style was clear and concise. Word, signature. Description, a name written by someone to show agreement or to confirm identity. It's a mark signifying authorization, recognition, or a personal touch. It can appear on documents, artwork, or correspondence. Phrases of example. First, the forgery was a perfect signature, indistinguishable from the real thing. Second, his signature on the petition felt like a commitment to a dangerous path. Third, she left a signature of grace and kindness wherever she went. Word, arrow. Description, a slender, pointed missile typically shot from a bow. It can also refer to a symbol or indicator pointing in a specific direction. It's often used figuratively to describe a course of action or a pointed criticism. Phrases of example. First, a single arrow cannot kill a man, but 1,000 arrows can kill an army. Second, the arrow of time flies in one direction only, and it never returns. Third, he was a man who had been struck by the arrow of love, a wound that never healed. Word, user. Description, a person who uses something, like a computer, phone, or website. It describes someone who operates or interacts with a product or service. Often used in technology and business contexts to identify someone who utilizes a system. Phrases of example. First, the user is the king, and the computer is the queen. Second, every user is a potential creator. Third, the user experience is everything. Word, flying. Description, describes something related to or in the air, often associated with airplanes or birds. It can also refer to a sense of lightness or freedom. It's a descriptive word that adds detail about something's movement or characteristic. Phrases of example. First, the flying fish leaped, shining silver in the dawn. Second, she had a flying spirit, always reaching for the sky. Third, a flying dream it was, and a fleeting one. Word, generous. Description, describes someone who is kind and gives freely, whether it's money, time, or help. It means being willing to give more than is strictly necessary or expected. It often highlights a person's willingness to be charitable and supportive. Phrases of example. First, he was a generous man, freely giving to those in need. Second, generous to a fault, he would give away his last penny. Third, a generous spirit is a better gift than gold. Word, complicated. Description, describes something that is difficult to understand or deal with. It involves many parts or factors. It suggests complexity and can refer to situations, relationships, or systems that are not straightforward or simple to navigate. Phrases of example. First, life is complicated, and we must learn to navigate its twists and turns. Second, the situation was complicated, and there was no easy solution. Third, love is a complicated thing, full of joy and sorrow. Word, survivor. Description, a person or thing that has lived through a difficult or dangerous experience, like an accident, disaster, or hardship. It signifies resilience and overcoming adversity, often implying a story of endurance and recovery. Phrases of example. First, the survivor felt the weight of what had been lost. Second, she was a survivor, forged in the crucible of hardship. Third, a true survivor adapts and overcomes. Word, attitude. Description, describes a person's manner, feelings, or way of thinking. It reflects how someone feels or acts in a specific situation. It can be positive, negative, or neutral, and influences interactions and behavior. Phrases of example. First, the only thing that I have learned is that a good attitude is not a thing that can be bought. It must be earned. Second, he had a kind of a terrible attitude about everything, and it was a thing that I could not stand. Third, she had an attitude of such terrible and beautiful confidence that no one could question her. Word, estimate. Description, a rough calculation or judgment of the value, number, quality, or extent of something. It's an approximate figure, not an exact measurement. Often used when precise data isn't available. Phrases of example. First, my estimate is that we will finish the project next week. Second, the cost estimate was higher than expected. Third, he gave an estimate of the damage. Word, tag. Description, a noun meaning a label attached to something, or a small piece of paper with information. It can also refer to a person who is easily influenced or follows a trend. It's used to describe identification, association, or a follower of something. Phrases of example. First, he wore a small, silver tag around his neck. Second, the dog had a tag on its collar with a phone number. Third, the evidence was tagged and cataloged immediately.